All right, we're good. We're live. My name is Sean. This is Suicide Noted. Mainly, it's a podcast. In the last few months, it's also been a live stream in which I've asked past guests to come on and talk about things we don't typically talk about, typically around one idea or one question. And last week, we were talking about a variety of things around or centered on mental health facilities, psych units. I'm using those words interchangeably. Perhaps that is incorrect. And I lean when I think about that a little bit more towards the shorter term ones, though longer term ones could be also part of this conversation. If you are watching, whether it is live or sometime in the future, I really appreciate it. And feel free to leave comments or ask questions, and I will be happy to get back to it. Maybe one of our guests who gets back to you. I am joined here by four awesome humans who I have had the pleasure of speaking to for the Suicide Noted podcast. Michelle is in Japan. Ash is in, should I say this, Ash? Are we good? West Coast? Because it's in the podcast information. So let's say West Coast, M in Iowa, Kyle in Australia. So we're covering all parts of the world, which makes me feel good in some funky, weird way. And if you know me at all, you don't hear me say that very often. So that's good. And let's talk about psych units. And so one of the things I did is I asked some of the guests who regularly come on these live streams some questions for us to discuss around psych units. So these are generated by some of them, a few by me. Before I get into that, real quick, let's just go around. If you'd like to do an intro, that's cool. But my main question in addition to that is, how many, if any, psych unit stays have you had? We'll start with Michelle. Who's muted? Wait, Michelle, we have to hear you. Unmute again. You're
I
good.
swear I clicked it.
No,
Zero by design.
Right, but you're here, and yeah.
Zero with some work. Let's put it that way.
Got it. Ash. Oh, Ash is gone. She's having some tech problems. So Kyle, if you could unmute and share with us. Yeah. What about you? What's your psych unit experience?
I've had a total of two, split between about 3 years.
Okay. Thank you for that. Keeping it simple, right? And M?
I've unfortunately had more than 10. My first being in 2018 and my most recent being last fall.
Busy few years. Or several years, yeah. Okay. All right. This is perfect. This is the perfect group of human beings to talk about this stuff. Ash just let us know, if you're wondering, that she is having tech issues. So she may join us. She may not. I hope she can come back. I've had two, by the way. One in 2008-ish, 9-ish, 7-ish, late 2000s, and one in late 2018, I believe. And mine were both under a week. And I'll just start off by saying they both totally fucking sucked. And I don't think that's very uncommon, though. I wish it were less common. Question number one. It's weird. I don't usually do it that way. Hang on, I'm finding it. This does not make for great TV. I know. I apologize. Hang on one sec. Whether you have been in a, this might not apply to everybody because some of these questions are more geared for people who've actually had these stays, but I think everybody can chime in. So here's the first thing I want to ask. Hey, Ash, I see that you're back. What's a message you'd like to give to doctors or nurses or people working in these institutions, given your experience? And if you haven't been in one, I think you can still certainly answer that question. Anyone want to chime in on that? Ash, yeah, you got to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think if I had to say anything to them, is that we are humans just like you guys are. You know, we're not lower life because we have mental health issues. We're not to be treated any different because we have mental health issues. We are humans too, and we need to be treated as such.
Not that I always agree with everyone, but I definitely agree with that. Anyone else want to chime in on that question?
I know I answered this last
Mhm.
week. I gave two responses, and one of which was similar to what Ash just said. But I think in addition to those, I would say um, creating an environment that is sterile and prison-like, um, and sometimes full of violence is not helpful to healing. And if you could, I would love it if you would look into how you could change that for us, because that just makes it 10 times worse for all of us.
Isn't it absolutely astounding that what you said isn't just so obvious to every human ever? Like, how can any? Yeah, certainly there must be someone out there who disagrees, but I please, if you're seeing this and you disagree, you can chat. I think you should be able to chat right now with us on YouTube and just leave a message. I would love to invite you to talk sometime, and I'll be cool with you. I'll be civil. I'm not here to attack. I just want to better understand how anyone would think the majority, let's say, of these spaces we're referring to are designed for healing or health or well-being at all. Kyle, yes.
Just wanted to add as well. I think is in terms of like stays majorly, not everything can be fixed with medication. A big part of it has to be communication and just talking as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Was it your all experience? Like, I know I'm going to tangent here a little bit, but we'll get back. I promise I'll do the best I can. Was it your experience that, like, for me in both stays, like the only real connections I made with human beings were the handful of the other patients? It wasn't with anybody. I don't think I can recall it being with anybody else other than another patient. Those are my people. Those were my people. I don't know. You know, without Em agrees. Thanks. Yeah. What is one thing you would change about your experience that would make it more valuable? Because we're not going to necessarily get to everybody's full story of all the stays in their hospitals. So we're pachinkoing around a little bit. We will get a sense of it. Like, and you could, of course, add more than one thing, but what's one thing that certainly that comes to mind that you would change if you could about your experience or experiences? There's no way no one has nothing to say here. I'm not buying it. Ash?
I'll go.
Yeah.
My first 2 stays, I would change nothing. But the last stay is I would change the fact that they need to encompass that healing environment and not just the prison environment, like was said before, because they treated it more as a prison and less of a healing environment. They didn't do anything for you.
Mm-hmm. Em?
I agree with that. I think I would change that pretty much every time I got out of a hospital situation. It was because I had to lie and tell them that I was fine
Right.
because I wasn't getting the help I need. And I would change just like the fact that I felt so much despair that I needed to end my life, but even more so despair that I needed to get out of that hospital, and then
Mm-hmm.
to lie to do that to doctors who were supposed to be helping me. So I would say just I would have hoped that I had gotten more skills, tools, resources to manage my suicidality outside of the hospital that didn't result in me ending back up in the hospital.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know it's almost impossible for people to understand it, like a lot of things, if you haven't gone through it. But I want you to imagine, if you've never been there, that you're going there for help, whether it is, and this is a question I have, something you chose to do or you were forced to do, but you are there and you are, you're in some kind of pain for sure. And this is not uncommon. I hear this all the time, that I figured out that I needed to lie to get out. I'm not getting help. I'm suicidal, or I'm ideating, or I'm in just a fuckload of pain. But if I don't say these things, I'm going to stay in this place that isn't helping. So imagine what that's like, to have to lie to get out. And I'm sure a lot of people get really good at that. It's called survival. And then you're out, and then what? Now, how scary is that shit? Now where are you going to go? And that's common. This is not like, oh, sure, every system or institution or whatever has their exceptions. Sure, of course. But it's pretty common. And bear in mind, right now, I'm talking to people in 3 different parts of the world. And I've had these conversations with people in different parts of the world. And so you see themes and patterns emerge. Michelle.
Yeah, I would definitely change it where you can choose to leave when you want to. I know that kind of goes against the typical thinking of it, but at the same time, like, the idea is like, we're keeping you here so you don't ruin your life by ending it, right? But by forcing you to stay can also be ruining your life in ways that you have to deal with for a very much longer time than you'd have to deal with it if you ended it. So, and with that also, like, I wish that the guidelines around it weren't so incredibly strict, where that you can't even like talk about it without this like clear dividing line between, you either don't talk to us at all or you're in and you can't get out. Because that was my experience, was like, how do I talk about the things that I'm feeling and the help that I need without getting sent to a place that I know is going to cause the end of my life? And so oftentimes that was, well, then you just don't talk about it. You just leave. You just say you're fine and you walk out before you get taken to that place.
And then you reach out to hello@suicidenoted.com, where you can talk about it. I'm sorry, I had shameless plugging. Cheesy. And should I ask a question and you didn't get, so anyone here didn't get a chance to answer, and that's on me. We can go back. Just let me know. I'm curious if anyone experienced anything during their stays that were illegal, and obviously you decide what this means, immoral. And I know that might be a tricky one to answer. Like, you might be thinking, I don't know if I want to reveal this. And of course, don't if you don't want to. But I'm wondering how often that kind of thing, or those kind, and that can mean anything. Kyle.
So prior to my first admission, I was basically told either you can voluntarily go or we will section you. And it's kind of that thing of, you're not really giving us a choice. So then at that point, why are you even like handing out those options?
Right. That's fascinating. Like, just take me, right?
Yeah.
Because we know where this is going. Don't be condescending. I don't have a choice. Wow. All right. So we know that happens in the States. We know that happens in Australia. I would be shocked if it didn't happen in a lot of places. Michelle, I've never talked to anybody, someone who is like born in Japan, Japanese. I want to, though. M. And then Michelle, if you want. Yeah. M.
I think my memory is a little fuzzy on a lot of stays, but I know things have happened. But the one that's coming to mind is just, I don't know if this is technically illegal, but it seems wrong that if you're on a hold and it's over the weekend, those hours don't count. The hours, the days, whatever, don't count.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense to me. So it's like, so am I just not getting care for those days? Should I be billed for those days still? Like that makes no sense to me.
Thank you for sharing that, because I totally agree. Yeah. What? Sometimes I don't even have anything to say, which is probably some people are appreciative of that, but like, it just doesn't make any sense. I want to understand. Please, if you're out there and you're like in public policy or like some hospital administration, can you just please, I know you're busy, but like, let me know some of these things and be real with me. And I just want to understand a little better. And I'm sure I don't. I'm sure some of people out there would be maybe let me know and like, well, there's a lot of things you don't understand from our side. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. Just let me know, because I don't, but I still don't get it. M? Oh, Michelle, was that M? M and then Michelle.
Yeah, yeah. And I was just going to add to that too, is the fact that they don't tell you that up front. So it almost feels like a little sneaky on their part. Like, maybe I do know it's wrong, but I'm not going to tell them until they ask, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I've
just
talked
is
to,
really upsetting.
yeah, this has come up a lot with like the lack of transparency. Just astounding. Michelle.
Yeah, I was gonna say like at least at least you have healthcare on the weekends. Japan kind of famously doesn't exactly. I mean, they do in the sense that if you're already in, you will be somewhat taken care of. But like hospitals and things aren't actually open for
Huh.
patients on the
Wow,
weekends,
wow.
and after certain hours. We don't have like what do you call ERs? We don't have like emergency rooms like that. Ambulances are the first line, so you call the ambulance, which is free. Ambulances come, it's free, and then they kind of sort of triage you out, decide like, do you think you need to go to a hospital, and if they do, then they have to call around and find a hospital that can take you. So if it's after hours, it might take a while for you to even get into that hospital or find a hospital. There's been horror stories of people that are having a heart attack and they die because the place can't find a hospital that's got enough people to
It's weird.
deal with that in time.
Yeah.
So like there's that. But then hospital care, I have some more information for whenever we want to get onto it with illegal stuff that's happened in hospitals here, even though I personally haven't been.
Okay. By proxy.
But yeah.
All right, let's circle back to that. Is that cool? Love talking about illegal stuff. M?
Yeah, one more thing just keeps popping into my head, but
Yeah.
also the fact that they can basically tell you no, get off the phone, you're not allowed to talk to your loved ones right now. Especially if it's like a big support for you. They have the right to like, because the phones are on the wall, they can be like, okay, we're going to turn off the phones. They could only have visiting hours twice a week, and apparently that's legal. I mean, it's a hospital, it's not a prison. We're not there because we did something wrong, and yet we're being like deprived of being able to see our friends and family. Like, how would, like, if someone was on a normal floor in the hospital, they could have their family there basically all day. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. The conspiracy side of me thinks that one of the reasons is that like they don't want people knowing what's actually going on in there. Yeah, they know. I'm wondering, for those of you that have had multiple stays, and if this applies to anybody, was there a marked difference in those stays in which you chose to go in versus when you were forced or sectioned, or insert any verb that applies essentially against your will? Does that apply to anybody here? No. M, yeah.
I don't think I've ever been voluntary on like a short-term basis, but I have been on like a long-term inpatient basis for either my eating disorder or trauma. And those long-term stays generally do go better. They're still the same institutional feel, but you get more adjusted to the rhythm and you're more accepting of the fact that you're going to be there and going to be there for several months or several weeks versus a major sudden life interruption where someone involuntarily takes you out of your life and places you there. It can be really jarring, I guess I would say. You don't have that time to mentally prepare or like understand it.
Yeah. For sure. And by the way, if anyone here has a question, you can also just ask the question or put it in the chat and we can talk about that too. I don't have to be like the dominating alpha male asking all the questions guy. I just happened to work out like that tonight. Kyle and then Michelle. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, piggybacking off M, I think the difference between voluntary and involuntary, at least with voluntary, you got to have that mental preparation to get kind of get ready for that stay. And then, figuring out what to expect, that kind of thing, apart from that involuntary where you're being taken and you don't know what you're going to be given.
Yeah, I'm wondering the extent to which anyone studied that, because sure, people will say like we had no choice, we had to put them in there, blah blah, for whatever their reasons are. But I would love to see some legit studies done on how traumatic that shit is. Not even the hospital stay necessarily. I mean, just the fact that you're taken against your will somewhere. That alone. Michelle?
Oh, geez, I feel somewhat speechless, even triggered just thinking about that.
You want to take a break?
Having no, I mean, I'm all right. Having not been, but having been told that, I'm like one step away, and then the fear level of that, and knowing like, holy shit, I've got to make sure that I do not get, cross that line, because I can't. It'll ruin everything. And I was thinking about how, the healthcare system in general is kind of weird here, and we don't have like emergency rooms and stuff, like I said. So I was like, I wonder what mental health hospitals are like here, because I do know that like you can get taken to them, but I've never talked to anybody or heard of anybody who's ever been to one or anything like that here. So I looked, and the very first thing I saw when I started looking was a news story from last year about a hospital. Did I get cut off there?
Nope, we got you. We got you.
Okay, great. I was using push to talk, and then I switched windows, so
it's okay.
Thought maybe. Anyway, a hospital here in Japan that has kind of turned into a major sort of rallying cry for reform, although that really hasn't helped. Where basically, a lot of illegal stuff happened. There was way more restraint than was allowed in other places. So patients being tied to bed, being, leather bound and things like that. And at this one in particular hospital, they documented over 1,500 patients that they, in a 10-year period, 78% of them were discharged by death. So whether that's suicide or other like physical, just they died in the hospital.
Wow.
78%. It blew my.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Like, what is the difference? I mean, that's worse than prison here, right?
Presumably,
prison here is like notoriously bad,
yeah.
but that's, I mean. So when I thought about that, when I heard that, I was like, holy, I have to be very, very careful now.
Yeah.
To never, ever get, like, it actually made me a little bit scared. I'm like, should I even be talking about this online? Like,
Yeah, but
I mean,
right. That's the
fortunately,
right.
here, you know, like they don't seem to really do anything unless you actually go to a doctor and the doctor can commit you. And you know, obviously this hospital is kind of a crazy, you know, like a way over the top case, but it's endemic of a larger problem.
Yeah.
So like, what's the point of even trying to get mental health care in a country where you could end up in a hospital and be one of the, you know, have a 3 out of 4 chance of never making it out alive? I mean,
Yeah, right.
not that you're likely going to end up in that hospital, but still, like the fact that that even exists is in a country that's supposed to be, you know, a big third, you know, a big first world, you know, G8 blah 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 country where they
Right.
don't try and kill queer
Well,
people. You know, it's like what?
yeah, and then how do you even measure just all the fear around that,
Yeah.
and then how that affects other decisions you make to try to take care of yourself? And yeah, 100%. Wow, that's a
I do know that there's more focus on trying to get you care on a clinical level.
Yeah.
So from what I've gathered, like hospitalization is more of a last resort than it is a first step. I can't say any specifics, but I have a someone that I'm working with, we'll say, who they're a minor, so I can't share any information, obviously. But someone with who I'm working with, who, you know, was able to get, you know, medications and things, and has had attempts without actually having to get completely locked up like that. And it's good because, like, you know, I would worry, like, is that person's ever going to get out if they do, you know? So like that makes me more afraid as someone who's in a position of like authority where, you know, if I take action, if I say something, if I recommend to someone, you know, it's that whole, like, if I report, you know, am I condemning them to that? So it's like, you know, I have to decide now, you know, what my responsibility is, you know.
Yeah. Em has her hand up. Em, thanks, Michelle.
I just had a question for Michelle. Do you know what the suicide rate in Japan is compared to the US? Like successful suicide?
Successful suicide. Let me do some research here. It's high, but I have to check the exact number.
Go.
It goes up and down.
ChatGPT. Well, I'll ask another question while you're doing your research, which we know these statistics are almost always rather inaccurate, but probably if they're inaccurate across the board, perhaps we can compare a little bit. That has a history, or at least a reputation, of being a country where there's a pretty high rate. In part, I think, because historically it was almost honorable in some situations, which is a whole other conversation. But okay, thanks for looking that up, Michelle. Good question. I am wondering, for everyone else, as Michelle does that, and do you know how much your stay cost? Were you ever able to find out? Did you ever get a bill? Did you ever see it on the insurance bill out of pocket? I want to know what you were getting charged per day, and then let's look that up and compare it against some good hotels and see what you could have gotten there. Anyone have that information? Do you remember? Australia might be different, right, Kyle? They might do things normal and you don't actually have to fucking go bankrupt. But Ash, and then Kyle?
Mine, for the most recent one, which has been a while ago now, was about...
You're cutting out, Ash. Cash, I'm gonna come back to you in a sec. Hopefully your tech stuff is a little better. Who had their end up? I think it was it Kyle? Oh, yep, Em, and then Kyle. Yep, thanks.
I caught a glimpse of the bill last year when I was in the hospital. I was already at the out-of-pocket max, so I didn't have to pay anything, fortunately. But that was also an involuntary committal, so that would have really, really sucked if I did have to pay for that. But it was over $20,000, I'm pretty sure, which is insane. Unlike what I got there was not worth $20,000. Like, that is crazy.
And Ash's was 15,000 for a week. I don't remember what mine was because I had no interest in paying. And I just didn't pay. Because I don't give a shit. I think it's so dumb. And it's an interesting thing when you've accepted that your credit sucks and it's never going to get better. It does free you up some. You're like, whatever, it's cool. You can send me bills. You can have people call me. I don't give a shit. Like, because I think it's gross and unethical and disgusting. So in that case, I don't feel so bad. I believe. Oh, Michelle has some information. We're going back a little bit to the M's question about the, what was it, the suicide completion rate in Japan?
Yeah.
What'd you find?
First of all, I think it's entirely unethical that they can force lock you up in a place and then also force you to pay for it.
Right.
If I'm not volunteering to go, you can't force me to pay. Screw that.
What'd you find?
So it's been going down actually.
Mm-hmm.
In around, from the 90s to the 2010s, it was really high.
Yeah.
It's actually still a little bit higher than America, but in this year it's been kind of neck and neck apparently. So it's on par with America. Data that I've got right now is saying you're looking at like 15.3 per 100,000 in the US, and where Japan is 17.5.
Okay.
South Korea, however, is 25.
Wow. Okay.
Russia, higher than Russia.
Yeah.
So the social pressures, it's interesting because I feel like social pressure must have something to do with it, because like ever since COVID, the numbers have just dropped off. Whereas I think in America, the numbers went up. Here
I don't
it
know
went
that.
down.
I don't know if it went up or not here.
I think that would be good to check, but I think that's what I've heard, that it went up. I'm not 100% sure. I would have to check. But I think it's interesting that like, because there was a lot of social things here, the structure that kind of broke down during COVID, that changed how suicide has happened. Like partly just like not being in school for a while really changed things.
Sure.
Not having the bullying and stuff like that. So I think that actually made my guess is that it changed things here.
Can you all, I'm not actually digressing, but I am thinking about a question or a comment that I believe Michelle posed. Can you think of any other place or system or institution or whatever where, and I mean this, a real question, where you don't want to do it or go there and you get billed? Like, is there another situation where that happens? If someone forces you to go somewhere, they justify it, of course. And maybe, and I'm not saying that's not the right move even, but like, and then you pay. Fuck it. Like, can somebody please help me understand? Again, I'll play the dummy here. I'm not getting it. Don't leave me hanging. I don't understand.
You don't pay in prison, do you?
I don't think so.
Oh, that reminds me of a story about prison that I meant to mention at some point.
Okay, is it related, or we could do it another live?
Yeah.
Okay, this is right. Whose hand is that? I'm seeing Michelle. Oh, that was your hand. Okay, so I guess we can't think of any other places, but if you at any point do think of one, I want to know, because I think we're really often talking about something that is in such a unique space in the world, in our culture. Oh, Ash wrote, not forcing you to go. Here, if the fire department gets called to your house, you have to pay. Okay. So that's getting in that space a little bit. Sure.
Same with like an ambulance.
What was that, Em?
Sorry. Like ambulance bills, they're really expensive. Insurance often, I don't think, covers. So, yeah, you don't really have a choice, but you have to go.
Yeah. Those are examples. Yep. Fair. I hadn't thought about those, right? Okay. This is a big and broad one. In your stay or stays, did you feel safe there? Which you would think would be like the minimal starting point before you could even think about. And we kind of touched on this in the beginning in particular, but did you at least feel safe there, Ash?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
My last day, absolutely not. I did not feel safe. It was, the staff was horrible. They just made me feel very uncomfortable, and so did all the other patients.
Wow. You're cutting in and out, unfortunately, but we caught that. You may have to, yeah, Ash, if you keep cutting in and out, keep trying, but you may want to use the text if you can. At least I can read it for you if you want me to. Anyone else safe? I can just tell you for me, and it's different, like I'm a dude, that might make a difference, but in my first day, I didn't feel particularly unsafe. In my second stay, I was actually in a room with a recovering heroin addict who was really in it. I think that was the only reason he was there, which in and of itself is bizarre. It seems like two very different places people would be going to get help. And it only felt unsafe because it was very clear he was hallucinating. And it's hard to go to sleep when someone's hallucinating, and who knows what's happening. So I think that was very good at all. I'm going to read what Michelle wrote, and then we're going to come to M. Michelle wrote that I have a Japanese friend who was sent by his family to a mental health facility, never heard from him again. Even his girlfriend never saw him. Wow. M, in Iowa.
Yeah, I was going to say that in my last admission, there was a patient who I guess later we found out he had been to jail before, or he had come from jail to the psych ward. It was a little unclear to me, but he attempted to stab another patient when they told on, I think it was him for like pocketing meds or something. And then later on, like the next day, they let him stay on the unit. And like the next day, he tried to he was alone with one of the healthcare workers in a room, like being evaluated, and he tried to stab her too. And then it was like a whole thing. So, no, at that point, I felt a little uneasy.
Right. Fair. Yeah. All right. So I think because the nature of the podcast and the nature of just me, I tend to skew towards like, what are the problems and what's the bad stuff? But it kind of makes sense because we're trying to get honest conversations. And usually the ones that we're not having are these kind. But it is worth asking, did your stay or stays help? Was it worth it? And I know if you've had multiple, you might have different answers. Kyle and then Michelle.
So my second stay was with an, don't know the complete word for it. I think I'm just going to call it like an open ward.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I was basically living there, getting all the treatment. At the same time, I was able to freely leave and like go to work, that kind of thing. So still being able to do my day-to-day stuff while getting whatever treatment I needed. And I think that made a huge difference in kind of the quality of treatment I was getting. Because I wasn't being isolated. I wasn't being, taken away from anything in particular.
Makes sense. I think it was Michelle. Yeah.
I didn't mean to raise my hand, but I was wondering something actually related to that. The last guest you had, Frank, he was talking about putting, getting bosses at companies and people around workers to put people into the hospitals if they needed to. And I remember hearing that and I recoiled. I was on the train and I was like, whoa, because like the idea that someone who obviously has all this training, but it's still like, yep, we need to put that in the person in a hospital. I felt like, I mean, what must have his experience? I mean, he must have had good experiences, or people around him must have had good experiences for him to be okay with doing that.
Right.
But I was like, it just felt weird. to me.
Yeah. Well, Frank's a speaker, and speakers get paid to say certain things. And if they don't say them, then they don't get paid. That's how the industry works. So Frank, I enjoyed the interview and a really good guy, but that's just the reality of the speaking industry. And if anyone takes issue with that, that's fine. Please message me. I might be wrong in certain cases, but I'm not. Yes, I believe M. Yes, M. Yes.
I just forgot the question. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it?
No. I think I forgot it too because we're bouncing around a little bit. I think it was
Good
a sort
experiences.
of burst of broad question around like, and you've had a bunch. Like, were they worth it? Did it help? Was it better than worse? How would you characterize yours?
I would say that the thing that came out of the experiences was pretty much all negative. I got better at lying and hiding my suicidality, and it made me more fearful to ask for help and
Yep.
made me feel like I didn't have any other options when I was experiencing suicidal thoughts because I never want to go back to a place like that. So.
And it should be said, I'm not, the four of us here do not represent all people who have struggled with suicide or all people who have attempted. They're guests of this podcast, and it's probably going to attract a certain kind or certain kinds of survivors. There's no doubt people who have had good experiences or feel differently. But one of the important things, at least for me, is that those voices tend to get heard much more easily than these. That was one of the premises for the entire podcast in the beginning. This giant, massive group of human beings who are not being heard. And so, yeah, it skews in that direction if one is listening or watching this and wondering. Yes, Em.
I'm used to a culture in a psych ward where most people will be like talking bad behind everyone, like all the providers' backs of being like this place is awful and everything. But one thing that is interesting is sometimes there are people who are like super optimistic about their time there, and they're like,
Yeah.
I'll ask them and be like, oh, so do you think this med helped or something? Oh, I feel so much better and stuff like that. So it is really interesting that some people like that was just what they needed, and I can't relate to that, but I think it's fortunate that some people have had that experience.
Yeah. And I think about who tries to find a podcast like mine, and that person describes probably less likely to look for it and or want to be on it. And I recognize that. So I never talk in absolutes. But yeah, I mean, God, could you imagine if it never did any good for anyone? Jesus. Kyle feels the same. I think Kyle was agreeing with you, Em. Of course, he's agreeing with me. I mean, a couple more questions, and then we could add whatever we'd like, as always. There's so many questions I want to ask her on this, but we'd be here for like hours and hours. Oh, this is an interesting one. So I believe it was Em. I think you asked a question in the thread originally, which is, how do you feel when people make jokes about psych wards? Wait, this is interesting. How do you feel about when people make jokes? Tell me if I'm getting this right. About psych wards after having been in one. Do you remember writing that? I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yes, I do, and I actually had an interesting experience earlier this week that kind of went along with that.
Wait,
Sure.
but what did you mean by that question? Because you could also ask the question of people making jokes who haven't been in one, but you specifically are talking about people who have.
Oh, no, I meant people who have not, but you have, after you have been in one. And
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. So what's your experience this week? And I'm wondering about what the other, Ash is gone, so maybe that applies to Kyle too. Yeah, Em.
So I alluded to a situation last week in our conversation, part one, about how when I was in the hospital, and they told me I had to go to the psych ward, I was like, I wanted to die. Like I was gonna hurt myself, and then someone interrupted me, and like it didn't end up working out, and I went psych. But then at work, so in our emergency department, we can sometimes see when there is a patient who's been there with a history of past violence. And one patient in particular that everyone was crowded around one of my coworkers' computer screen had to do with someone who had tried to harm themselves with a bed sheet. And that got them like a violence warning next to their name or whatever. And I saw that and they were all laughing about it. And I didn't know what to say because that was like basically me. And I didn't know what to do in that moment. It was really hard.
Yeah. Michelle?
I was thinking along with that about movies that kind of either make fun of or scare. There was a movie called Girl Interrupted.
Sure.
And I had been diagnosed with BPD before that. I had completely forgotten about it for years and years. I only remembered it recently. And I just kind of brushed it off because I was like, oh, I don't know anything about this. I don't know what it is. And I didn't bother doing the research. I mean, this was before the internet-ish days. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't, anyway. And so I saw that movie a few years later, and it so scared me that I was like, oh, thank goodness I don't have that. I don't ever want to have that. I don't ever want to deal with that. Like, it made me really scared about the concept of BPD as an illness, and the idea of like being, put in a hospital like that, because it was so just like stereotypically tropey scary. And I feel like we almost play that up to an extent. It's like it's a horror trope of like the mental hospital. It makes me wonder, like, what are we doing that the place that's supposed to keep you alive and safe and healthy is literally the scariest place in every movie?
And you can easily extend that out to all kinds of other things in this broader conversation with respect to how certain things are portrayed, right?
Yeah, but that kept me from
a suicidal person. How are they typically portrayed, or whatever else, right?
That kept me from being able to engage with and learn about that diagnosis as time went on, because it was so scary. I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to think about this. So that diagnosis just went completely forgotten from then on.
Right. Interesting.
And it could have been, I could have gotten something out of that had I not seen that particular movie that scared me so badly about it,
I am wondering, I only have a couple more questions I want to ask, and then whatever else you'd like to share. Of course, I very much want to hear. This is a tricky one to frame, because all of these hospitals or psych units or facilities, so they're structured differently and they're just simply done differently. Typically, I hear that people are underwhelmed, certainly disappointed with the amount of time they get to actually see a medical professional there, whether that's one-on-one or a small group. And I don't mean the group stuff where they make grown-ups act like children and do silly things, which is also part of the little game you need to play to get out. Okay, because a lot of places do that too. But like, just like getting to talk to a doctor about your stuff. Maybe it's around medication, maybe it's around wanting to kill yourself. Like, for me, I found in both cases just a shockingly tiny percentage of time. Like, it's not as if I expected it like to be 4 hours a day, but I remember in my second experience, the more recent one, obviously, which was like a teaching hospital. So I had no one-on-one time, and in the course of 5 days, because my first 2 days were in a psych ER, that'll be a conversation for another day. Because fuck you for creating them, specifically the University of North Carolina. You're criminals. Pause, wait for it. True. 5 days and like maybe a few hours, maybe collectively 90 minutes with a main doctor, and then a main doctor, main doctor and some of his minions. Is that enough? I don't know. It just felt like not enough. So I'm just curious. I don't know who has their hand up, but M, or specifically M or Kyle, because you've had stays. Sound a little similar or different for you?
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I would say even less, actually. It's just an interesting balance because it's like you're trying to get help, but you don't want them to see that you are suicidal because you're also trying to get out. And if you say you're suicidal today, then that for sure means you won't get out tomorrow. And it's just like this whole game that you're trying to like mastermind in your head to be like, how can I get help or how can I get out? I have to pick one. I can't have both.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you're just kind of screwed from the start, right? Legit, like really. Wow.
And at the
But-
same
then,
time, sorry.
You go ahead.
Kyle?
And at the same time, like usually in that however long you're spending with them, they're focused on just the medical side of it. And not really like just looking at charts and stuff, not really focusing on, you know, the whole mental side. Like what they're hearing from, say, the nurses, that kind of thing, compared to them speaking to you and actually gauging how you're doing.
And people know. Like, sure, there are people who are in some sort of perhaps disassociative state where they're just like, but most people who are there trying to get help, like they know what's happening. Meaning, like in your case, Kai, and I don't mean to speak for you, but I think like you can clearly feel if they give a shit. You can clearly feel if they really want to help. Like, you know what I'm saying? The I don't know. And then maybe that's an unfair expectation because maybe they're just doctors and they're not like our partners or our family. Sterile, man. Sterile.
Oh goodness, I forgot again.
It was just about,
talking.
it was primarily about like the kind of one-on-one or small group care.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was gonna say like, and when you get upset because you haven't seen a doctor and it's been like 24 hours that you've been on the unit and you still haven't seen a doctor and you get upset, then they take that as she's more mentally unstable than I thought. And no, any person would be upset at that point, and it's just
right.
It's so frustrating.
It's an interesting thing the way they use the thing against you, because I remember when I was being quote evaluated after my 2 days in the ER, like I was in a different state than when I came into the hospital. So now you're evaluating because you put me in kind of these, like, I would argue, like inhumane conditions. You know, anybody would be riled up. Anybody would be pissed off. Like, of course. And then you get evaluated on that. And it's like, well, further evidence that we need to take you upstairs for a while. And probably, I wonder what the cost of stay is in the ER versus the 5th floor for UNC. I don't know if it's more expensive or less expensive. Would you recommend any of the facilities you were in to someone you cared about? Kyle, no. Kyle, straight up, no? Okay. You've been in a couple more. Would you recommend any of them to anybody you care about who was really struggling?
I had one decent, not decent, but like less terrifying, and they treated you better. But unfortunately, that place doesn't exist anymore.
Go figure.
So, yeah, I can't recommend it because it doesn't exist anymore.
Michelle chimed in with a hell no. Yeah, I wouldn't either, and I would love to be able to. I'd love to be able to. But I can't.
I think
No.
I just think there needs to be more like opportunities for people to have like in-home support, whether that's from like loved ones or like what's it called? They talk about like sending crisis counselors to your house or something like that. I feel like that needs to be an option that's used more often rather than like, I mean, I know there's purpose in taking you out of your environment and also removing anything that you could use to harm yourself, but sometimes that's not always warranted. It depends on the person.
Yeah. And it's tricky when you don't know and you don't have the opportunity to really get to know the person. You err on the side of caution. But, there are places for people who are very wealthy. Here we always often comes back to money, that are indeed very comfortable and nice and sort of outdoorsy and in a really fresh, beautiful, nice area and spread out. And why wouldn't that be the norm? Especially if you're paying a lot of money like they bill you. Like, I don't see an argument for that or against that. Like, I guess someone could say, well, there's too much freedom there. But what else would you like to talk about? Psych unit related. I've got nothing else I want to ask, although I could probably talk about this for a long, long time. But any other thoughts before we get back to our lives? Want me to read these a little bit as these chats are coming in? Michelle wrote, empathy gets in the way of profit. Yeah. Oh, yes. Michelle's got the story about prison. Let's roll. Let's do it.
Okay, so this is a story that I heard on a old radio show that was being broadcast. I think this is from the late 90s, if I recall. And basically, it was a news story about a prisoner who was on death row and attempted suicide. And this was, I think, I don't remember exactly, but it was like a week or something like that before they were supposed to be executed. And they attempted suicide and were apparently successful. But the prison facility, took that patient to a hospital where they were able to resuscitate that patient and bring them, back. They their heart stopped, along the way or whatever, and they're doing care and everything. Bring them back from their suicide attempt, from their heart being stopped, so they could then execute that patient a week later.
You and your yeah, go on.
No, yeah, and it's like, what's the value in that?
Yeah, of course that's absurd. Well, that story and the one about that other hospital are very much worth talking about, but lean a little bit more towards exceptions, but still worth discussing.
Sure.
Like, wow.
But I mean, what it comes down to, right? And I've been thinking about this. Is what it comes down to is it's all social obligations, right? It's not actually for the people who love and care about us. It's about making us better. For the few people in the industry who care about their patients, it's about helping their patients. For the rest, it's about fulfilling social obligations. You have a job for society, and we need you alive until we're done with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And even if your obligation is to be executed, so the family of your victims feel better, then gosh darn it, we're gonna keep you alive. We're gonna save your life so we can kill you because that's your job. To me, that's
good
just
topic.
cruelty.
It's good topic for a future live. I mean, it's worth noting that hospitals have a purpose, obviously.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the right place for somebody for when they're going through some of these things. Of course, everywhere always can be improved upon, but it really should be more, I believe, openly discussed what actually happens in those places to these people more. It just should be. It's, I think, in any other situation, or certainly most. I mean, yeah, it's a tricky one. Yes, and then we're gonna wrap up.
I wonder if there's some sort of correlation between stays in psych and successful suicide attempts in terms of do suicide attempts get progressively more lethal? Do their methods change based on past experiences? I mean, you can't ask the person, but you can infer some things maybe about
well, you can ask survivors of a suicide attempt.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is one of the beauties of the podcast is I think proud of the work. That's a tricky one, and it gets into other things too, like correlation versus causation, and right. But that would be an interesting thing to delve into. Yeah. Wow. Anything else? Appreciate y'all being here and talking so openly and honestly about this stuff. I know for some it's not the easiest thing to talk about, especially when it's personal. So kudos and thank you all from several corners of the world. And I will simply add that these are happening about once a week. So probably the easiest way to know about them is to subscribe to the relatively recent or rebranded YouTube channel, which is Suicide Noted. And the podcast comes out now twice a week. Mondays are original episodes, and meaning conversations with people for the first time about their attempt or attempts and all things around that. I was thinking the other day about like how I think the podcast really is just as much about life as it is about death, but that's maybe me getting, I don't know. And then on Thursdays we have update episodes, so we're updating people who I talked to a year or 2 years or 3 years prior. So check it out. You might like it, you might not. Who was that, Em? I wrote the letter to the governor. Oh, wow. Em, can I read that aloud?
Yeah, go for it.
So you wrote a letter to the governor. No, go all the way to the top and got no reply. Yeah. You would think they would have people on staff that would, at a minimum, at least reply.
Yeah, I heard nothing. And I went, yeah. And that was after many, many, many stays, and I still got no reply.
Yeah. They got better things to do, don't they? In their mind. All right. Don't know next week's topic. There'll be one. And I hope, whether I'm speaking to you all or other potential guests or people who are listening or watching, I hope you can join us. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Kay. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Ash, even though I know you're not here anymore. I'm just not here on this platform. I don't mean not here at all in the world. That's all I got. I'm stopping this now. I hope your evenings are decent. Bye. Thanks. Ciao. Peace.